Let me give you a little bit about my background in the legislature. When I arrived there were 22 of us. After the second term, we had 32. We've now gone to 72. And that 72, as you may well know, some of those guys we don't know until they cast their first vote what they are. Because if you can be assured, you've heard that they ran Democrats in Republican districts in North Alabama, and well, pretty much Central Alabama on up. And so we lost some really good people, and some members have come on board, and they seem to be Republican. We wait to that first vote, and so we'll have to wait and see how, when it gets into the heat of the battle, what shakes out. In my capacity, I do serve on the leadership committee, and that is primarily because I'm chairman of Constitutions and Elections. And so I did chair that committee and wanted to do that to keep our revision of the Constitution out of the circus atmosphere that could exist if we had had a convention. And that convention could have been very interesting if you'd sent some of the proposals that came up were 2 members from every district, 105 districts. So you could have had 210 people there. Would there have been some influences? Just think about it. If they would have chosen 2 people out of District 96, who would be those people trying to influence? You would have higher ed, education, medical practitioners, you'd have road builders, IBEW, anything, you just name it, and all of these constituent groups could have someone that they wanted to move forward, nominate, and elect at the local level. So it could have been quite an interesting thing. One of the things that we've done, and we've served over the last 4 years, we had 60 meetings, day-long meetings, people came in. We were able to pass 4 revisions that we sent out to the people, and you approved 3 out of the 4. And taking the Crow language out of the Constitution was the one that didn't get approved of all issues, and I can talk on that if you would like. But we have 3 others that are ready to move forward this legislative session, and that you could vote on in 2016. They are what we might call the low-hanging fruit. These are non-tax issues and things that are just getting rid of telegraphs. No longer do we have the telegraph. So, but there are amendments there that are significantly important to the Constitution. When you change one part, it's like a spider web. It changes throughout the whole district or the whole Constitution. Let me say that I am bringing greetings on behalf of the speaker tonight. And now that the press has left, I can talk a little more freely because we're going to release tomorrow our agenda, the House Republican agenda, and I'll give you a briefing of that tonight. And hopefully you won't say much about it until tomorrow, but that will be done in Montgomery. The Senate will release theirs on Monday. In my capacity as the whip, I serve at the pleasure of the majority leader, and essentially what I do is I have 10 deputy whips that are appointed by the speaker, and on an instant moment's notice we can get a vote count on where the membership is on particular issues. We know whether it's going to pass, whether it's going to fail, if there are people that we need to nudge along. Maybe we may have to amend a bill to bring a few people along on that. But that's generally what it is. And trust me that when you have 72 people who are the most important guy in their district, they think, they have a position that they want to hold the line on. So some days are more difficult than others. Going on, I served on reapportionment as the chair of Constitutions and Elections last time, and I will do that this time. I'm on the Permanent Reapportionment Committee. Now, that was a thing that 4 years ago, and I saw as the most important piece for Republicans in the country. And why that was the most important piece is this country was moving to state governments being controlled by Republican entities, i.e. we have the most or the most governors, Republican governors, than we've ever had. Legislatures this time around picked up close to 7,000 seats around, whether in state houses and county governments and municipalities. So there's a big move about that, and we had the opportunity, as did every group in every state that had the reapportionment, which occurs every 10 years. You do your census, you find out it's biblical. You find out where the population is, and you reapportion and redraw the lines. And in that capacity, I saw that as a very important thing, one, to do it right, to do it so that we wouldn't go to court, do it so that it reflected like communities, and part of the responsibility is that you have to draw an incumbent in their district. And so that is part of the federal law. A group of us went to Washington and studied for a week to get hands-on experience there. And then the first thing that we did was to redraw the Republican, or the House, excuse me, the school board lines and our congressional lines. And so in the past, the House lines had a plus or minus 5%. Now, Mr. Oates, the tax man here, works with figures much more than I do every day. But if you do plus and minus 5, how many fingers am I holding up? That can be 10 from one end of the spectrum to the other. So what was happening in high growth communities, which were Republican districts, I had 73,000 in my district. I was supposed to have 45,000. And the district to the west of me in Mobile was supposed to have 45,000, and she had 28,000. So that was one of the key ingredients to change, is to get that plus or minus to a 1%, 1 plus or 1 minus. So in the congressional lines, it's 0 deviation. Everybody gets the same number. One House district in U.S. Congressional House district has one more person than any of the others, and that was just the way the math worked out. The other piece was the school board districts. Now, school board districts, we ended up, a real issue has occurred, and it has occurred in the minority population. And according to the Justice Department, we don't refer to this as minority, we refer to it as black districts, okay? The Voting Rights Act required in Alabama that you draw 26 black House districts, not minority districts. Now, several things have happened. Paper and pulp industry has kind of gone away. I remember when there were 13,000 paper makers in this community. There's about 600 to 800 now. The sawmills, the lumber yards, all of the pulp that got moved has really created an issue for black movement and moving to new locations. Another thing that has occurred, and you've seen it, HUD has said, let's tear down the 5,000 member HUD housing projects, Roger Williams, Happy Hills, Orange Grove, Birdville, and displace that population, and we'll use it through Section 8 housing, which can then be in any neighborhood, in any district, and they range anywhere from $800 a month up to $1,200 a month as the range of placement. So we lost large populations, and a good thing has occurred. A number of blacks have done the education route and the high quality route, and they're living in neighborhoods, and they're working, and they're paying taxes, and they're working, and they're paying taxes, and they're voting with George back there, and helping us as they've seen a difference in what being upwardly mobile can be about. Now, I hope you're following me here, because when all of a sudden you decide to say, okay, I can draw Pritchard, Roger Williams, and Happy Hills, and I've got a House district. You can't do that anymore. For our two districts, we are the only coastal counties. You couldn't draw to the west of Mobile because you were in Mississippi. I couldn't draw to the east of Baldwin County because we're in Florida. The same problem happened along the Tennessee line. So those were very, very difficult districts. Shelby County was once the fastest growing county. We are now. Okay, so that has changed. And Baldwin County's growth, I thought, and did some studies on that, we thought that growth was snowbirders coming back to live here and things of that nature. It was Highway 84 change in population. Now, if you go to Waynesboro, Mississippi and follow Highway 84, it goes to Silas, it goes to Coffeyville, Grove Hill, Monroeville, on across this state. But along that way, there were factories, there were sawmills and paperwood centers all the way, and there were also sewing factories. And each of those had a 300 or 500 member or 50 member sewing factory that's where the locals worked. And all of that's gone to China. If you followed what's happened to Vanity Fair, their town has all but been wrecked with the garment industry leaving. So that we found that people moved to Baldwin County. They found a good place to stage a new location. They could work at the beach, they could work in Pensacola, Mobile, Biloxi, shipyards, paper mills, Austell, things of that nature. So it's been a gift there in some sense, but these people have not come from great distances. They've not come from the north as one might think. So to put all that in perspective, even the mobility, people are staying here and they go, well, the husband got a job at Keesler, we're moving to Biloxi. My husband got a job in Crestview, we're moving to Florida. So the mobility was even much more difficult to deal with. To say all that, we had to draw the school board member. We shrunk the district locally because the white population was here, but Ella Bell from Montgomery, her district is from Montgomery all the way to Dog River, okay? And actually the river was the line where you would float down the river and you could draw in the city of Pritchard, and you could draw in the city of Mobile, and you could draw large portions to get the right population, okay? We had to have 2 seats there. And so to find that population made the drawing very, very difficult. Now, what has happened in this, we did that the first year. The second year, we then drew the House and Senate lines. And with that, this is the most political part of politics, is reapportionment. He who's has the pencil gets to draw the lines. And we did a thing that we met with people, we met with incumbents, we talked about neighborhoods and like communities. Republicans and Democrats, independents, everybody had a time to bring their map. If they had a map and drew it and it fit the 1% deviation left or right, we accepted it and moved it forward. And on the final version is what you finally have that's out there now. Just for Baldwin County, we picked up a House member. So North Baldwin is now represented by a gentleman who lives in Thomasville. But he didn't have any population. It is a minority or black, and it's a black district that came into Mobile. Ms. Bell's district is a black district that represents Mobile and Baldwin, some of the upper part of Baldwin. So we now have 6 House members where we just had 5. Harry Shiver, who had 4 counties, now only has 2 counties. Alan Baker only has 2 counties. with much more population in Baldwin County than he had in the past. So those are just some of the nuances about reapportionment. On the 14th day of November, the High Court heard the Alabama reapportionment court battle. The Democrats brought a lawsuit against it. We felt like it was bulletproof, and they could still bring a lawsuit. So we were there on standby. Testimony was they were angry that we had to have districts. I mean, the courts, the high court, the justices were kind of like, why do we still draw? I thought we had gotten rid of the Voter Rights Act. And so another thing that played into this is after we drew, Shelby County got out from under, through a court suit, the Voter Rights Act in Shelby County. So precedent was set to say, well, everybody ought to be out from under it. Elections are very expensive. Probably $50 million was spent in this state on the last election. And it goes, you know, to run another election this quickly would be pretty tough, so we'll let the courts determine what can happen. What can they say? Everything was fine. Redraw the following lines. They could name certain districts. Redraw Mobile County and Baldwin County. We don't know. But at which point there could be another election for these current House seats in the state of Alabama. Let me talk about a couple of other things. Rules. As a rules member, nothing goes to the floor that the rules committee members don't select. 15 members on that committee. I'm on that committee by virtue of my chairmanship, and this is the first time I've been on rules, but bills that come in and out have to be vetted by the rules committee, and they either go on or they do not. So that puts you in a pretty good position. I hate the word power because I don't see it as power, but you do get to move some pieces along. My interest, of course, is the beach, the wind pool, the high insurance that we're paying, the no return on our gas dollars that continue to leave here, and so we have some legislation to deal with that. The other thing is agriculture, Baldwin County being a large agriculture community. But in that, I am chairman of the sporting events, water and hunting. It's the old committee that used to be called hunting and fishing. There are 89,000 freshwater licenses, okay, in Baldwin County. You can go up to Montgomery, there may be 1,200, okay? It's a big deal here. Freshwater license here, 125,000 of those. So in between Mobile and Baldwin, a big thing. And then the other part of why I serve on that committee and wanted to stay there and not do something else is the conservation director, who is on one side, is a trustee for the BP settlement. And then having the water committee in that, the trustee at the University of Alabama, at the Alabama Geological Survey, is the other trustee. The third trustee is the governor's attorney. So working with those people and having over the last 4 years since Deepwater Horizon hit, and having worked with those gentlemen, really keeps me in the mix of what's happening to your money and to the fix that's got to occur here. So we've got one of our people looking into this, and so I served that committee 2 times, and I really wanted to go back, and now that the money's coming, I want to make sure it's spent in the right place and not have somebody there who doesn't have the experience of a Doe Leaf Bay and a Tallahassee Creek that floods and all those things. I'm mainly talking about the committees that I serve on. I'm a member of the Building Commission. In Alabama, the Building Commission oversees the building of all state facilities, school buildings, public centers, and also hotels, restaurants, theaters, and venues of large public gatherings. like the Wharf or Mobile Civic Center or something of that nature. I don't have to do a whole lot. There's a building commissioner, but we do meet quarterly and approve these buildings and the facilities changes that are there. I did want to say that we don't just run into town and dream up what we're going to do. We were elected in November, and then the first thing that we had was a training session in Montgomery, and the Alabama Law Institute did that. When you have a lot of new people, there's the art of government. There's 13 steps to passing one bill. And so it can have many derailments along the way. So you have to kind of get the new members up to speed. The second thing is in January we had the organizational session, and we actually there were no pre-file bills because we had no rules. So the speaker asked me to deliver that the rules to the body. And so the first thing that we did was elect a speaker. Speaker Hubbard was reelected. The second thing we did was to elect the clerk of the House. That is an elected position. It's not a politician. It's the general office manager. The third thing was the pro tem. Representative Victor Gaston from Mobile was reelected to that. And then after that, we introduced the rules by which the body will function. And so took me about 3 hours to go through the rules. The Rules Committee had met. And so the idea is the rules chairman doesn't get beat up in this process, and he can stand the process better that way. So after about 3.5 hours, it was a pretty simple process, but we did have lots of questions. The second thing that you have to do, we did that the second day of the organizational session, is the Senate did the same thing. Then we have to do a joint set of rules whereby the Senate can talk to the House and vice versa. So that's the process there. And then we met back as a caucus in Prattville 2 weeks ago and brought forth what will be our 2015 Republican agenda. And as I said, some of the things that are in this, we're working on the 21st Century Workforce Development Program, continuing to move forward on that in a process where Alabama, and I heard earlier about Common Core, and I won't get into that, but there will be a Common Core repeal bill. And there has been a sense, after this has been out there for a while, that Alabama had higher standards in the first place, and that in some situations the Common Core diffused those higher standards, and that test results are showing that. So those are the kind of things that make it a lot easier for people to have an educated assessment of what's going on. There is draft legislation for that. Another thing that we're looking to do in education, there was as a part of what we're trying to do, dual enrollment has become a very important thing, and I see some students here that I've worked with in the past. But we're introducing dual enrollment programs so that when a student in the 10th grade can start taking dual enrollment or AP courses that are funded and can significantly minimize the cost to the family, to the parent. Oftentimes I've had lately parents tell me, I had no idea that sorority dues were going to be this much, or fraternity dues and things of that nature, because my dad, we didn't ever do that kind of thing. We're just glad to be there. And so the cost is just kept going up. Higher ed has raised its tuition over 50%, depending on what university you're looking at, over the last 5 to 7 years. And that's been a part that the legislature didn't have the funding to send them that they had in the past. And so they balance their cost by increasing tuition. So we're looking to continue to fund those scholarships, criteria to be met for students who can participate in the dual enrollment. We have a lot of it in Baldwin County, and it's generally a good payback. We're continuing to work on the economic development initiatives. Um, in the past, we had initiatives that we put up front, and then maybe the companies did not meet their quotas of, and they had already received their monies. So then you had to do a clawback, essentially ask for money to come back. I don't know that we ever did that, but we put some companies on notice. We're going to change that formula and look to do more as a pay-as-you-go and avoid any public relations problems that exist. And believe me, our neighboring states, anything that we trip or stumble on, they use that as another means to recruit. Another piece that we're doing is a Transparency and Accountability Act. There are over 442 taxes that exist, whether it comes from a federal, whether it's an EPA related or an IRS or an HHS or a FERC, all these federal things. And so we're going to be looking at repealing more than 300 of these particular pieces of legislation that over the years have been placed in position, and those will be listed tomorrow. They're currently in the code, and of course Mr. Taxman, you wouldn't have to change them this year, but that would be something that would be coming as a part of it. We also found that some taxes cost more to collect them than we're generating. So we've streamlined and gotten rid of some of those. Another piece is a truth in salary provision. And the truth in salary provision is a situation that has been problematic for lots of legislators relative to state employees and school teachers, whether it's higher ed or whatever. A superintendent budgets about $82,000 per teacher. That's the budget that they have to use. And when you get into that, you say, well, what is that all about? It's a bachelor's degree, maybe it's a master's or a AA or a PhD. It's years of experience added on. It's nationally board certified. This is an automatic $5,000. That's an add-on. I'm getting there, aren't I? Then you do the FICA. Then you do the payroll deductions relative to the health care. Teacher health care is over $900 per unit now. And nowhere does a state employee, and then there's a match for retirement. The employee puts up 7.5%. The state was doing 10. Now it's a mix of the two, and that is kind of lost in the process. Another thing that's lost in the process of a 9-month employee is we just spread that 9-month salary over a 12-month period. So it looks pretty, it's hard to say, oh, well, but you only worked 187 days. I know you worked a lot after hours. But the truth is not, we want to be able to say that this employee, their contract benefit says the following thing, and that we think that it will help in the sense that we didn't give a pay raise last time because we gave an untaxed increase in the health care because of Obamacare. Okay, so the Obamacare pushed teacher insurance up about $200 across the board, and so you could have even given a 2% raise or a 1% raise, which would have wiped out any gains that they would have had. That was a very difficult lesson to say, this is why we're not giving you a raise, we're covering your health care. There's a sense about the retirement that the new wave of educator in the charter school bill, that we will have a charter school bill, that educator could waive tenure could waive retirement, could waive health care, and deal with it on a, you get the 82,000 or 75,000 or whatever, and you manage your own money. And so that's a part that's being floated. Now these are turning out to be reforms that are pretty aggressive, pretty against the mold when you think that the Republicans have been in charge only 4 years of the last 30, now 140 years. So we're still want to be bold with our activities. We did a tremendous amount over the last 4 years of changing legislation. And the other part is there's some look at a marriage bill. I heard a little bit of talk about that. The Alabama Freedom of Religion in Marriage Protection Act is something that you might see. We're working on it with our legal piece. And then the other piece that is that Alabama Capital Punishment Preservation Act. Currently there are 197 inmates who are on death row. Some of them have been there 35 years. We moved in 2002 to the lethal injection to stay out of the federal court. And this particular Preservation Act will bring back, as it's referred to, the electric chair or yellow mama. She's on loan to another state, and so this particular piece of legislation will bring that back. And so as horrible as that might sound, we don't have $400 million to build a new prison. And that's what the Prison Commission proposed recently. Outside of this particular agenda, we couldn't go any deeper because the governor hadn't said what he wants to tax other than everything. And that, as I said before, 75% of the people in that house ran on no new taxes and no taxes. And and he didn't tell us anything about that. So I can't respond to any legislation that he may propose because we don't know that. And so come Tuesday night, he'll release that in his State of the State address, and then we can proceed forward. I don't know how much time I have, but
you're doing great on time. When you feel like
let me talk about the $700 million that you've seen. The $700 million exists in a variety of ways. Under Bob James' administration, I believe that the Highway Department started putting money in the general fund. I think it was $3 to $5 million the first time. Then the next year they had to put a few more dollars in. And it's up to 60 plus million now of highway money that goes into the general fund to pay for Medicare, Medicaid, all the issues that are derived out of that. Another thing that happened, there's education money, 189 million, that left education to come in and pay for child health care issues, the CHIPS program. Before you go to school, when you go to school, there's a provision there that's housed in the education budget to fund health care for children who do not have health care. And a well child is an easily taught child. When they're sick and miss, it creates all kinds of issues for the well children in the classroom. So there's 180 plus million there that's in the general fund that came out of education. And so that needs to be moved back. There is 400 plus million that was in the rainy day fund that was voted on by the public to draw down to fund the general fund. Many years back gave provision to draw down 10% of the budget. So it was about over the period of time, it was about $400 million, or 400 million is where it is now. In that drawdown, statutorily, this governor has 4 years where he can say, I'm not doing anything. I'll leave it to the next person who comes in, and they'll have to pay it all off in 1 year, which would be, and that we don't have any negotiating power there. That is statutorily done by the voters. So Governor Bentley has said, I'm going to pay 20%, start the 20% pay down there. Another thing, 2012, September, Amendment 1, that Amendment 1, we owe $139 million a year to pay that back. So if you start to count a little bit, all of a sudden you can get to 500 million in a hurry. And so it's generally not new monies to be spent on new things. It's monies that we've got to pay some debt, and whether we do that or not we will see how Governor Bentley's bill comes out, and but that's the general gist of where that $100 million is, which helped me clear up things a little bit about. In other words, the sky's not going to fall. But if you want to go in and try to fix it and make it utopia, then you deal with all 700 million. And so that's kind of where that is. Yes, ma'am.